is appointing an interim director.
Adjournment.
I move that we name Lindsay Miller Esker Fuller interim director effective November 22nd through March 31, 2023, for the start date of a new director, whichever is shorter.
Okay, that was a really long motion that the chair is supposed to repeat. It's been moved to appoint Lindsay Miller Esker Fuller as the interim director, starting 11/22/22 through 3/31/23.
Start date of the new director, whichever is shorter.
Okay, or start date of the new director, whichever is shorter. All right, discussion.
Now, one question. The date of the 21st that you depart is a Monday? Is that your last day? So you're here that Monday? So Tuesday morning at 8 o'clock or midnight, whatever the clock. Okay, so the timing is, because I got to thinking about understanding that the last day, full day for you is the 21st. Thank you.
Are you worried there's gonna be an emergency like at 11:30 at night on the 21st?
The rope will blow off. and
Okay.
What do we do? Yeah.
Right. So Amy, are you still around until midnight on the 21st?
Oh my gosh. No, sorry.
Yeah, it says 11/22, so that will be 12:01, Lindsay. Any further discussion? Okay,
I have to say, on behalf of all of us, thank you for taking this
yes,
on.
yes.
It is not without sadness, but also gladness that you're willing to do it. We know you'll do well. We're working with you, hearing from you so that we can do it the right way to make you successful.
Thank you.
That was really nice, Judy. Thank you very much. I don't do those little things very well. Thank you very much. Okay, so it has been moved to appoint Lindsay Miller Esker Fuller to be our interim director from 11/22/22 to 3/31/23,
Or the start date of a new director,
or the start date of a new director,
whichever is shorter.
You're not holding up there.
whichever is shorter. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Righty. Good, we got that taken care of. The next item on the agenda is hiring a recruitment consultant, and that also is an action item. So,
I had a question. Do we accept, what was the right wording for my, I'll take a turn with a motion. To accept June's idea? Okay. Then, Madam Chair, I move that the Consolidated Library District accept the contract from June Garcia to begin immediately.
okay, it's been moved to accept the, how about recruitment consultant contract from June Garcia,
Describe what we're doing. That's a good idea.
to start immediately. Is that right?
Mhm.
Okay. Discussion. Discussion, anything anybody wants to say?
Well, I'd like to say, as part of the public portion of our meeting, information that was shared that I believe is pertinent to the public, that we thoroughly vetted this company. We went through a a director search back in 2020. And we considered a panoply of consultants at that time and chose to go with June Garcia, and she proved to be very effective in helping us put on a director search and hire a director. And so it's reasonable and prudent for us to use her again. Not only that, but she's going to charge us the same rate that she did back in 2020, which is wonderful considering the economy and inflation. And
Thank you. Anybody else?
Kind
Okay.
of a tangent, I was hoping to get a physical copy of the previous contract. Just because printers.
Okay,
Have to be today.
Yeah, I can do that.
that's good, because you can come and look at my files. I think they're still there. I think I haven't had time.
That's what librarians do well, right? We
Yeah.
provide accurate information. Thank you.
Okay, it's been moved to accept the, contract from the recruitment consultant June Garcia immediately. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All righty, that's good. We've got those. Then, let me see what the time. Okay,
Madam Chair, while you're looking at the time, part of that acceptance of the contract then commits us all to a November 17th meeting with Garcia.
we would be the 17th. She would be meeting with staff on the 8th.
Should we, oh, you had to say anything better.
That, yeah, I think that's. Yes, and so that would, that, yeah, you know, we will let her know and get a plane ticket and here, I told her that I'm enthusiastic about actually being face to face with her.
Yeah.
We have a list of meetings at the bottom of our agenda, which the 17th isn't on here. But I'm assuming that we're saying it's happening. Will it be in Post Falls?
Yes, it will be in Post Falls. We didn't put it on there because it wasn't, it was all dependent on whether a contract was being approved and whether we were truly moving forward at this moment with June. But yes, it will be, the 17th at Post Falls. Katie, do you want 2 to 5, 2 to 4?
What, I don't know what June will need, how much time she will need. I
So
couldn't-
block out 2 to 5 and
Yeah, 2 to
we'll
5.
confirm
And
that with June.
I know Judy has a dental appointment that she's trying to change. If you could be 3 to 5. No, my suspicion is that June's not gonna want 3 hours. You know, I mean,
Very
like,
good.
you know, I'm not positive about that, but I'm pretty sure that she, you know, she's pretty efficient. So, do that. We can move it around, concerning the dental appointment, I guess, but that's all it is. Dental appointment's like at 1:30 and be an hour, so maybe 3 to 5, I don't know.
And that may work. June's flight, if she hasn't made her flight arrangements yet, she was waiting for us to approve it, but she had research flights and I think she'd be getting in at like 12:40. So a 2 o'clock start, she'd be able to make, but would be pushing it close.
Okay, so we'll let's kind of head for 3 to 5 with her, and that will give Judy a possibility of having it done. Judy, on the 17th, we're looking at, based upon flights that June's already looked at and shared with Amy, we're looking at a meeting like 3 to 5 that day, so you might be able to get your dental appointment in, plus,
Working on it. So, yeah, but we're working.
okay.
Thank you.
So we can do that, and that might work out better for June than meeting at 2, because her flight comes in apparently 12:40, is that what you said?
Subject to weather or I agree with that. Okay, then, after that, I suggest maybe we can use some of her evening time too. We'll talk with her about that. Once she's here, we're gonna work her every minute.
We are? I'm not, you ask her.
I think the more times we can have time with her. Yeah. But I would suggest that night. Not us, whoever can fit it in or some version of it. Talk with her about the schedule. Just think about taking the time, we'll figure out how to fill it up.
Okay.
And then she was here the next day and leaves at
That part, I think it was gonna be dependent on, so we don't know that yet.
I guess I'm one of those who's got recruited for, or on our nickel and we will. We would use that time while she's here, because it's really hard to get. Zoom meetings will work, we did it all. So this is a special moment when she can be here.
Mhm.
Now when it's the lay of the land.
I think taking her out to dinner would be nice. We can pull that together. I'm not the social director. I do that horribly.
She'll come.
I would show up.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Okay, the next item on the agenda is the director's job description, and knowing that June would want us to do that, I'm probably, I went ahead and because we have someone here who has been sitting in this position. And because I felt the job description was absolutely cumbersome and awful and over my head, I asked Amy if she would look at it, and, and, you know, give suggestions on what she felt would be a better one. That's certainly what we would do anyway. So she did, and she condensed it, and I'm like, yes. That was for me. But Amy, would you like to talk about this?
Sure. So just in looking at it, particularly, as an admin team, we write and edit a lot of job descriptions. So typically we're just kind of summarizing duties, because an exhaustive list isn't always helpful because that lends things more to somebody saying, well, this wasn't in the job description and so forth. But if you've summarized and particularly with an executive level type position, you know, a summary is much more common and best practice. So you would talk about kind of the key areas of responsibility, but not necessarily. So really, I just try to, within the same categories that were already there, just do more of a summary list, versus every possible, you know, thing that would happen there. And so that's really the suggestions that I had. I didn't necessarily put in new duties, you know, unless it was more of a broader, you know, type description than was there before. But that was certainly, and compared to several other library director positions.
Comments on this?
I had just one, what role does June have in job description?
As a consultant.
I mean, she can advise, but you know, the board is the one approving the job description. So, I mean, I think, if a board has asked her, she may have given some advice, but typically she's taking the job description and then building the application package around it.
And that's fine, I just want to be sure, again, you guides us on, right? Or there are any things we should or shouldn't have in here that did she see this one last, the cumbersome one last time?
Yes.
And she did see it this time too, and so I was already working on it, and then she kind of recommended to me that if it was up to her, she would have summarized it, but we were already on that
So we're
same
already learning
wavelength.
from her.
Yeah.
Even before a contract signed.
Yeah, have anything they want to add, talk about?
Yeah, simpler is better and generally the changes make a lot of sense. Sure that my paging is not the same as yours. So I'll start at the qualifications. The first thing says ALA accredited master's degree in library science. And I thought that it might be a good idea to ourselves from the ALA. Not just that the majority of the ALA voted in a closet socialist, but the majority voted in a publicly avowed Marxist who wants to use the collective power of the ALA to clear the library. And also that Marxist theory requires violent revolution. So I don't know that that's really something we want to be closely associated with. I don't know, it's just so blatant that it speaks volumes.
Can I
what the
say,
ALA is pushing.
I can completely understand what you're saying in terms of like a public relations policy or whatever. But do remember that a library, this is going out to library director, you know, to people who are in the library world. And I don't think it holds that same sense in the library world, does it?
Well, I think, well, I guess a couple of things. I mean, ALA is the organization that currently accredits Masters of Library Science programs. And so this is specifically about accreditation for a master's degree program. And then I would say, again, the Marxist is one individual that hasn't even taken office yet.
Yeah, but it's a majority of the ALA people who voted in someone who's publicly Marxist.
But this is the organization that accredits the schools. And I guess that's what I'm trying to say is I can understand it from a PR point of view, but we want somebody with a accredited master's.
Okay, is there any other organization
An accredited,
besides the ALA?
So Rochelle, it's just like, if you want to go to a law school that has accreditation, you have to go to a law school that has been approved by the American Bar Association. I mean, since I've been a lawyer, I don't really know anything about the American Bar Association. I mean, but they're the organization that accredits law schools, just like the ALA accredits, what Amy was saying, this particular degree. If you want an accredited degree, then it has to be from an accredited place. So, I mean, there's a difference between the organization and accreditation, at least in my view, but if you would notice, and this I think is important, that there's a big or in all caps that says a combination of education and experience demonstrating the ability to successfully meet the requirements. So I mean, I don't think we're saying that you absolutely must. Yeah, that we're only gonna consider these candidates.
But
It's broader than that.
it also says that the accredited master's degree, ALA, or related degree. So it's got all sorts of wiggle room, and this isn't a public relations
Yeah, I had,
plea to it.
I had seen the or, it's just the ALA being very first.
Well, that's because that is what the organization that does the accrediting.
To that, Rochelle, it's good to have you remind us, the last school, where it was a combination of education experience. Did that last time too. We've seen that university president, the University of Idaho president now, who's never been a president of a university before, he was directing lawyers. And that gave him a lot of credentials. And so this kind of phrase, gives that kind of room for various experience has value too.
My questions, but
Okay.
does anyone else want to?
Thank you.
I don't wanna- So the, well, it's almost to the end. Oh, okay. Wow, this says
Maybe you could name that section.
yeah, library groups and community involvement.
It's on, for us, it's on page 4.
Okay, so in red, it says participates on local boards and committees, and so it's the first red section under that, that title, library groups and community involvement. Participates on local boards and committees, and I was just wondering, what does that line mean in practice?
I mean, I guess I could share what I've been involved with. In terms of local board, really I'm part of the local Seroptimus chapter, which is about women in education, because, but that was really more something personally, but I still represent, I mean, they still ask your profession, and that's part of that. And then committees, I've been part of the Alice Task Force that's hosted by the United Way of North Idaho. Other committees, might be by invitation. And so usually this is looking at, does the group align with the mission of the library? Is there is there a project that the community is working on and the library might be a part of that? So those are just a couple of examples. I mean, prior, there's been sometimes participating in local chambers, some of our staff, our library managers have served on the chamber boards and so forth. So it could be something of that nature. So I think it kind of just depends. I mean, there's not like a de facto one that as somebody comes into this role, they'll automatically be on this board or committee. Usually, at least in my practice, got to know the community for a bit and then looked at what would most align with the library's mission.
Yeah, too, because certainly from this board member's point of view, and I believe our entire board has said to whoever our director is, get out there and get in the community. Get your branch managers out in the community, chambers, not just chambers, whatever other activities are going on, whether, I think it's parades, I've seen some of our staff in parades. And I highlighted it to Humanities Commission when they had their dinner up here. Discussion about the book and the literature and history there. And scooped up your husband on that one, because I felt it was one that would be useful. Useful, but fun for you, informative, and connects the library with the Humanities Council, a good source of ideas for books and programs as well.
Worth sharing that when, those of us on the board that went through this process before, we had a debate about whether or not to require that the library director reside in the district. Because the prior library director did not reside in the district, and therefore, I mean, I think you lack some knowledge of your community if you don't necessarily live in the district. Ultimately, we reached the conclusion not to require that the director live within the district, because, you know, I mean, it's just, should you really dictate where a person decides to live? I mean, that was, you know, but that was something that was an issue that we struggled with. So this part of the job description is the way for the board to encourage the director to say, we expect you to be involved in the community. That's part of your role as director, to engage with the community. So that's why this section, and I think that's the purpose of this section.
And I will just a caveat, actually part of my contract it didn't necessarily say the district, it did say North Idaho, so it did say don't live on the Washington side, basically. So,
At least with an item.
'Cause that-
Get with it,
I think where the prior director did.
Yeah. That's what I was thinking, that we did limit.
Forgotten.
It was a compromise.
Mhm. What you're all about, right?
All right.
It have one question.
Yeah,
probably.
yeah, oh no, go ahead.
Okay, so under professional development, which is the next section, says participates in professional library associations and other professional organizations. Are there any library associations that are not far left? I mean, I know that, you know, only the ALA accredits, but I don't know, I just wouldn't want to limit our search and the job description only. I just wouldn't want it to discriminate against people who are more neutral or.
Would you describe the American Library Association as far left?
I mean, I
thought it was a nonpartisan argument.
I mean, as an association, I mean, that I'm not sure I would say they're necessarily nonpartisan, because there's lots of issues, because they're an association, they do advocacy and they do
Okay.
lobbying. And so by that nature, unlike a library, we can't lobby, we can't be political. You know, we are very much and should always be nonpartisan, but this is an organization that's advocating for stuff like safe working conditions, you know, funding, you know, all of those natures.
Skills you need.
Right, and things like that. So, so yeah, I'm not sure I would say far left, but I would say it is the national organization, and as there's been a variety of issues as they've lobbied for libraries to help represent unrepresented people. I mean, I think there's certainly been some concerns, you know, from some, but I would say your local associations are going to be far more representative of their communities, whatever that might look like. So your Idaho Library Association, you know, is going to look different than the ALA. The Pacific Northwest Library Association looks different than the ALA. So there are regional and local associations. There's also more specialized. So there's some are still affiliated with ALA, but more in certain areas. So there's like a young adult library. We also, you know, things like that. So depending on your specialty, you know, your so forth, or there's other types of more informal professional more informal, you know, library groups, and then a variety of professional organizations that might just be more leadership based, you know, maybe not necessarily even library based. So I think, I mean, this is nice that it's already worded fairly broadly anyway to leave it up to the individual versus saying specifically, here's the organizations to align with. You're saying that this more generally. And in terms of June, she's not going to use ALA channels. She's using her own broad library networks to reach out to library professionals. So you might see it on an ALA job list, but you'd also see it on several other more regional, that have nothing to do with.
Third question. It would help me if I understood what far left meant.
Okay, well, I wasn't trying to be derogatory. I just seems like
No,
an association with an electorate or electorate already been openly Marxist and wants to push things in that direction that like that's
That one organization, that one person, right? That organization, at least, that one person right now. I do concern.
No,
all of
well,
us
yeah,
have-
yeah, and like I said, it's not just her, it's the fact that the majority of the people in the ALA for that position voted for someone who said that she was gonna use the collectivist power of the libraries to, or the collectivist power of the ALA to libraries, something
The
like that.
catalog,
seen the
it
code.
was queer in the catalog,
Okay.
wasn't it? Yeah, yeah. right.
And that person is a leadership role for 1 year.
Correct, yeah, starting next year.
Oh,
And I
yeah,
would say
okay.
also, ALA has about 40,000 members and, in any given election, I think only 10,000 voted. So I mean, it's just still, I mean, I guess I just want to say, and there's 120,000 librarians across the country. So, I mean, as we're getting, I mean, this is one large organization that represents libraries. There's many librarians or library staff that decide, yes, ALA is a valuable organization, and others decide that there might be other organizations that are more valuable to them. So, I mean, there's certain guiding best practices that ALA is very useful for, but then there's other things that in terms of a professional association, I think each individual decides what's important to them.
Yeah, and I think it's worth commenting that just because you're in an industry that happens to have an organization whose head is, has said these things, I mean, I liken it, I guess, to, I have no idea who's at the head of the American Bar Association, but I'm sure that person wouldn't speak for me or all attorneys, and I'm sure the same is true for librarians. I mean, you're in that industry, but you're not beholden to whoever is heading American Library Association. So, I mean, it's certainly unfortunate, but I think that this job description and the way that that section is labeled is broad enough to basically the purpose, the way I see it, is you're expected to stay engaged, relevant things that are happening in your industry and joining those organizations that would help you do that. I don't think it's dictating any particular organization.
I would also be surprised if when she got in office, those words were spoken again. My suspicion is that there are many people who are extremely unhappy with the leader in the, to show, saying something like that. That is, yeah, I think that the American Library Association is bigger than that.
Her
Do you have
term-
others?
Her term is 1 year. How far into it is she?
She hasn't started yet. It'll be next year.
I'm curious as to what
How
her
that
PR is
lasts.
gonna be. Yeah, I bet money she doesn't ever say stuff like that. I don't think that went over well.
Uncomfortable.
Yeah, it is.
Would you entertain a motion? I like the changes. I like the condensing of the job description. I don't know, once you strike all that language, if like we're under 3 pages, but maybe, I think that's great. So I move that we adopt the library director job description, draft dated. Well,
We did, I'm sorry, I didn't change the date on it. So it'd be today's date.
okay, November 4th.
Okay, it's been moved to accept, the draft of the library director's job description dated 11/4/2022. with the changes noted, yeah. All right,
Mm.
more discussion.
Did we get all the questions you had?
I was watching her, so I didn't mean to, and I could, that
I
looked to
think
me,
you're yes.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I didn't mean it, but that's what I was seeing, so I'm sorry I didn't ask you.
I will. My other questions had to do with, within this job description, what do we do about salary, starting date?
I don't think we
compensation?
typically deal with that in job description. We do not, that is not named in a job description.
But then when we run, consultant then forms up the process to run the job description. There's no description of what the range of salary would be.
Oh, yeah, there's a salary, don't you, we had a big discussion on salary, on what the salary would be.
And when does that happen? So I'm getting ready, if we're getting ready to run this, need some more thinking about what we're.
What happens is June puts together a packet. And at that point in time, and she will guide us to the point, I mean, then we will have a meeting, but that, she would say, you know, we will have a meeting where that will be the discussion.
It's important to me, that's right, that we as a board understand and on the terms with the budgeting process that's gonna need to happen.
Yes.
To make this happen. Okay, thank you.
No, absolutely, she can't, recruit people if they don't know what
Right.
salary is.
And people
Yeah.
won't apply.
Yeah.
And that's sometimes why we use the word range. That you, the wiggle room for how skilled they are, what product they bring. I mean, I want to do it that way, but I've seen it done because I don't know exactly what the compensation should
Did we
be.
have a range? Did we have a range?
Starting
I can't remember.
at or something like that. But she can, and she'll also update us on what the starting things are in the outer world now. Which will be a year, 2 years, and then by next spring when you start work. Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions or comments? All right, it's been moved to accept the library director job description draft dated 11/4/2022 with the changes made. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, and anybody opposed? Okay. The next item on the agenda is the material selection policy discussion, and it's also an action item should we want to that we make sure we put it on so we have choices. See where we're at. Oh, we've got plenty of time.
New version, right? 11.4.
11/4 is our date for this. The things that were added are in the thing. Basically, we've gone over everything except for the things that were added on your computer under reconsideration of material. And those were the things in blue. And those were added at our last meeting. So those would be the only things at this point in time that we haven't gone over. Is that correct, Amy?
Yes, and I would say, the first like two items in blue were, suggestions from Vanessa, and
Yeah.
I put them partially in blue because everybody kind of nodded their head, but I wasn't for sure that had everyone's approval. And then the very last item in blue, I think we had asked for some possible rewording or, adding something to that sentence that would denote that if there was something new brought forward about a book, that we would certainly consider it if it had already been reconsidered. So this was our suggestion for some wording there.
I would like to say for that last phrase, unless sufficient new compelling evidence is introduced. I would like to congratulate the staff on the brilliance of finding that phrase over that very difficult concept, because that is exactly correct. That gives, it certainly addressed, Rochelle, you were the one who brought it up, but after you brought it up, I was like, all right, yeah, that is true. And this certainly does it, Anyway, there you have it. I just wanted to congratulate you because that was great. Okay, discussion on that. Okay.
Actually, was, okay, so on page 1, towards the bottom, read along with the freedom to hear. I didn't come up with a brilliant addition like staff did in that other part, but just the district subscribes to the freedom to read statement in the Library Bill of Rights adopted by the American Library Association. Could we put adults either, or for adults, either at the beginning or the end of that sentence?
That would be limiting First Amendment rights for children, which children do have First Amendment rights. I don't know.
I mean, they do have some First Amendment rights, and the freedom to read statement and the Bill of Rights has not separated out children statements. And some of the court cases that attorney referenced, those court cases were specifically about minors. So I think adding a limiter here, we would certainly want to our attorney.
Sure. I had our attorney look through this.
No, what we will do is we will pass a version and then we will have our attorney vet it. And if she has questions, then we'll bring it back. Otherwise, she's saying, yes, we like it.
Could highlight to her the question we have now.
But I don't,
Be sure that we're doing it.
I'm gonna say very clearly that adding a limiter for children, I think is a dangerous place to go. I'm wondering if, Regina, you have anything to say about that?
Well, first of all, I thought that we had, that Katie Brereton had seen at least a prior version of this.
She has it right now. She just hasn't. I have several things, like I said, into her. And so we handed her a copy when she was both here. And then I also emailed her a copy a few days later, because we did have one other specific question in there about the reconsideration every 3 years. And so, but I have not received her response.
But we did at some point discuss it with her, because I recall us discussing it with her and whether to add additional verbiage regarding the definitions that are in the criminal code. Which ultimately I don't think is a good idea to add those definitions because they're quite long, and hard to understand. As I've said, I think that whether you reference these other policies in this policy or not, those policies apply as they have been adopted by the Idaho Commission for Libraries, which our services are to comply with. So when I was perusing the Idaho Commission for Libraries site, I thought there was a different Bill of Rights applicable to minors. But I think the Bill of Rights that's being referenced here is the general Library Bill of Rights. I think the freedom to read statement, which we've discussed here quite a bit. I don't think the freedom to read statement differentiates between adults and minors. But I guess what I'm trying to say is I don't think we as a board, as board members should be trying to limit these other governing documents that apply to libraries. So I think that's what makes me uncomfortable. We are just simply referencing those policies as a whole. So I think that try to change them actually distorts what it is that the libraries are to be guided by.
I would just remind, we did add some language though on page 2 that does include some already legal language about harmful to minors. It was just, as we're talking about the freedom to read as a principle, I think there are many court cases that have upheld that regardless of age.
That's what I was thinking, is that we had added that statement, and it said materials for minors under the age of 18 that violate Idaho codes will be excluded from the juvenile and young adult collective.
And that's on page 2.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like, we've limited them.
Right, and certainly we can't say that minors don't have these rights under the Constitution, they clearly do. I mean, their rights go so, their freedom of speech rights go so far as in public schools, for example, and you can't tell them what to wear. I mean, you can't. I think that's part of their expression. So, I mean, minors absolutely have constitutional rights. I found it really helpful that the changes were in blue, so thank you for that. And because, you know, when you've got all these strikeouts and the new verbiage, the blue was, yes, distinguish it nicely. I think that we were on board with Vanessa's changes. And I'm also grateful that staff came up with a way to address the 3-year moratorium. So I think that strikes a good balance. And I don't mean to hog the floor, but I just like to keep things moving. So I'm prepared to move to adopt the material selection policy draft 11/4/2022.
Okay, it's been moved, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay,
So moved.
okay. It's been moved to adopt the material selection policy draft 11/4/2022. More discussion? Discussion. All right, all those in favor?
I
Opposed? Okay, all right. Then we have adopted this material selection policy.
I mean, I know we just had a motion that was adopted, so we probably moved on from the topic. But given that it is still in the queue for our board attorney to review, I assume that staff will bring it back to us if there are any red flags.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
So, yeah, that sounds good. And we can put it on the agenda in addition to make sure that we touch base with what the attorney said.
report from the intern.
All right. And the next item on the agenda is the compensation study update, and that is for Amy. And you're on.
Okay. Well,
Before you do it, did we get a written version? What do I think I saw in the email?
Yes,
Am I mixed up?
they did.
Yes, a couple weeks ago, or a couple days after the
We didn't do
October board meeting, I did send an email.
That would give us, right, that you're not.
Really, I'm just doing an update. Melena's gonna be back, and
Okay.
that's part of what I'm gonna share.
Wait,
We had a very packed, regular meeting last time, so Melena spoke, and we kind of moved right on to some other items, and so I just wanted to share a little bit about kind of what's happening next and kind of what the plan is, so that when Melena comes on the 15th, kind of everyone's aware of what's being presented and so forth. So, so she did do her PowerPoint presentation last month, and she shared more their high level findings. So she wasn't sharing the specific salary recommendations yet because they were still doing some work there, but she was kind of sharing some of the general findings of, you know, that this percentage of our positions were out of market. Here's where we were, you know, below minimum with a certain percentage of our positions, and talked a little bit about turnover and average tenure. So now what's happening is she has brought to admin, she gave us 2 draft salary schedules and basically said, can you afford these, essentially? And one we cannot, no matter what, at this point. But she did create a temporary salary schedule that with some adjustments, I believe we can afford. So we will be bringing that at November 15th, but you'll see clearly on the salary schedule, like what we're proposing the new minimums to be, but then where we want the minimums to eventually be. Does that make sense? So she'll have the temporary minimum and then the target minimum, so to speak. And so that's part of what she'll be bringing. She'll also have lots of other data for why she has the salary schedule that she has, but I just kind of wanted to prep you all for that. So she'll be bringing a lot of data, but what the board will actually be ultimately approving is the salary schedule. It's just like typically would happen each year as part of the budget process. So it'll be a new salary schedule, but we've been reviewing it. We've made some suggested changes because, you know, just as we look at some positions, the title was different for us than who they compared it to. So we said, well, actually that other libraries call it this, we call it this. So that kind of created some reclassifying of positions. So we will be bringing, or she will be doing a presentation, and then there'll be definitely quite a bit of time for discussion. I hope to have it in the board packet. If not, her and I are meeting to finalize some things. She's been on vacation this week, Monday. So I'm hoping then, because I'll be mailing the packet Wednesday, that I'll have it to mail in the packet. If I don't, then I will be emailing it to you. So look, you know, if you don't see it in your packet, look in your email. And again, it will be kind of the salary schedule. And so that's what would be the new minimums and the new maximums for each of our positions. And it will take a little bit of some additional funds. We, as a reminder, we put $135,000 in this year's budget. It looks like we, to do kind of even the temporary minimum, we need probably roughly, we're still working on some numbers, roughly another 60,000. But also at the November 15th meeting is we will be bringing forward our additional carry forward discussion. This is about what we did this time last year. We started looking at, okay, we do have some additional carry forward and where should we allocate it? So we will be asking for a certain amount to be of the additional carry forward to be allocated towards salaries. They'll be planning to also go elsewhere. So that will be another item on the November 15th agenda, will be the carry forward discussion, so that we kind of know, okay, you know, we know where this salary schedule would be funded from, if that makes sense. And then a budget hearing should be set for sometime soon, you know, well, in December, whenever that be after I'm gone, but you know, we'll work on all of the logistics for that and that information. But typically it takes time to review that carry forward discussion and then approve it at a budget hearing. So that's kind of where we're at with the compensation study. We've also been just doing some analysis, you know, on our end. She did a costing. So in addition to giving us 2 drafts of the salary schedule, she'd gone through each individual staff member and where they would fall so that we would have an idea of costing. And then we took that and put that into Janelle's spreadsheet because that's a little more reflective of our actual budget. And so that's where we're coming up with what difference we needed in terms of that funds. And just so you all know, we had put in addition to the 135, we had proposed a couple of, or 3 new positions and some hour changes in this year's budget. But the priority really is for us doing the salary survey. So we would probably put on hold a couple of those new positions and not hire them this fiscal year, because we would prefer to use the funds for the salary adjustments. So really just kind of wanted to give you an update of all of that so that we can know what's coming on the 15th. But any questions?
Some comments. I don't know if they're questions, but just going back, and maybe I've already said it, but I applaud you, Amy, for taking this on. It is a very big undertaking to analyze staff salaries, and I think it's been needed to be done for many years. So I guess I do have a question, which is that one of the concerns that I think we, the board, had with those ranges is that the ranges are very wide, and as salaries were increased, I don't think that it was as transparent to us as maybe it should have been as to how wide those minimums and maximums were. I think it's a very dangerous ground to be on when you have such a huge gap between your minimums and maximums, because how there's too much ambiguity there, there's too much discretion there, and you run the risk of not having a level playing field among staff And we want to be sure that it is a level playing field among our staff. So my question is, given that it sounds like you've already seen those minimums and maximums, are they much more tight?
Yes, I'm gonna forget the number, but, and I can't remember if it was in Melina's PowerPoint or something she had just said in, the meeting that her and I had. But typically for a range, you're looking at 30 to 40%. 30, that you would want 30% from your minimum to your maximum. And we had everything from 40 to 80%. So we had some ranges that were definitely way too big. So yes, you will see those maximums on some come down quite a bit. For some, they may not look like they came down, but that's because the minimum came up quite a bit. Does that make sense? And so, but yes, much tighter and much more aligned with how a range should be.
So when staff was complaining about our salary schedule, was some of it that they could not articulate the unfairness of it? Or just not enough money? Just curious, because let me back up and say, she took my breath away in showing me how bad we
I think, and correct me too, I think it's mainly been not enough.
just not enough
Not
money.
enough. So not necessarily, I mean, we do have a couple of positions that, when you see the new schedule, hardly have changed their minimum because they were right at market. But really the vast majority, I think, as she said, 60 to 75% were well out of market. So you'll see several positions where the minimum is a bit higher than where we are. And then you'll see a couple that are, actually, I think we had only one that was actually slightly over market, but yeah. But then everything else was either under or just at, but most under.
Was it worse at the lower ends? And are we a little better at the upper ends? Okay.
Which is not great, right? I mean,
No, that's pain,
yes,
right, that's
yes.
paying the head honchos and
Right,
that looks
and
like, just
no,
looks
and-
terrible.
Yes, and so I mean, absolutely. So, I mean, I think we all have seen that and known that and wanted. I mean, I think just like the board was ready for this, admin absolutely was ready for that. Just
Yeah,
needed the data to be able
yeah,
to do it equitably and fairly.
yeah, so hiring a consultant who can look at this objectively was a great idea.
Well, and it protects us too from certain wage claims to have it have been vetted independently.
Question then you be bringing to us then the new budget as to not just a lump sum, but how we do it and how soon?
So what I'll be bringing is, so one, the salary schedule, and that will be kind of a separate, I mean, these are all things we'll be talking about, but we'll have the salary we'll have Melina's presentation, then we'll have, here's the actual salary schedule, in front of you to approve. Then we will have the carry forward discussion.
Right.
And so we will bring, here's how much we ended, more than we needed. And then here's where we'd like to allocate it, some of which will be to salaries, some will be to facilities, some will be to a couple of other items that were under budget that we found out recently as well.
Which will help us with your guidance. That'll be in writing to us to look at.
Yes, because we want you to be able to have, like, if you're approving the salary schedule, you want to know where the
Where the
money is
ripples go.
coming from, to go to it. And even if we don't, I mean, and the plan is that we'll be working towards a budget hearing in. I think ideally Katie would like to do December. If that can happen, there's obviously a lot going on with recruitment and special meetings. Last year we had it at the end of January, I think. So, but I think getting it squared away that we are going to do the budget hearing, hopefully will be helpful so that we understand where the money for the salaries will come from. And we're still doing the math on the carry forward, but there were a couple of items that again lent us this year to having a bit of a surplus. One was over 200,000 in additional sales tax and donations. So those were things went really well this year, but can't always predict. And then the other was we had a few unspent areas. Salaries was one, so we're going to ask for a little bit more, but but we were under this last year, and that was because we had multiple positions that were just really difficult to hire for that sat vacant. We had 2 positions that sat vacant for the whole year, but we had to keep them on our books because we were trying to hire them. So that was where we came unspent in salaries for just that turnover and vacancies. And then I think we've already talked a bit about some facilities and capital projects that couldn't happen either due to the vendor or timing or weather related things. And so because of all of that's how we ended up with a decent amount of surplus. So we'll have all those exact numbers at the same time on November 15th.
Thank you for doing that, because that was gonna be my question.
Mhm.
Are we gonna see why we have such a big carry forward? Because this, particularly for our new trustees, this looks like, oh, well, we always have this. We don't. And
I think this will be like year 3 or 4 that it's
Yeah.
happened, but not, when I looked back at all the past budgets, it's.
And it isn't just this next year's budgeting, the ripples go beyond 3 salaries, that's great. That needs to be an ongoing fulfillment need that we have. So many things we want to do. Helps me to have not only just looking at it now, but what you see is. I think it's a tribute to you as our leader that got us going on this. Thank you. I think.
oh no, I'm grateful. I'm super grateful.
Yeah.
I being able to get some kind of grasp on how off we were in salaries has been phenomenal. And being able to clearly state that to staff is great. So, okay. Anything else that we want to talk about the compensation study update?
Wants it in writing so I can look at it.
Yes.
Okay, then we are down to set special and regular meeting dates, and we have 15th regular meeting from 2 to 5. Now, Jim McNall will
Right.
not be coming to that meeting on the 15th. He's not able to come. Did you already say that to them? I can't remember if you just said it to me. Okay, yeah, okay, so this is me telling you this.
Agenda will be.
The agenda will be everything else, and in fact, I'm a little relieved that he isn't coming in a way for this meeting, because we have just these two, just carry forward and the compensation study are huge. Yeah, and they just, so will also be Amy's last regular board meeting. He just okay, so we have the 17th, and we could ask her to do 3 to 5, but we've asked everybody to save 2 to 5, and then we'll
Let's do
find
that,
out.
and I'll do
Okay, and then we'll see, and there may be, we may have some sort of social thing going on with June that evening. So kind of think about that, keeping that open and going out to dinner with her is what Judy's suggesting. So then
Probably going back to June to see if that her important part of the social gathering.
yeah,
And that we'll all check with her on that.
yeah. And then,
Early evening.
yeah, we could go
That time change.
from the, yeah,
From the meeting with more gathering and then
yeah.
pull up.
Jim McNall, I still think is valuable as part of trustee education. And he would be here on, what date did we ask him for? The first of the, was the first?
He'll be,
December 1st?
he'll be back up this way, the 1st and 2nd, so we've asked him for the 1st, because that's a Thursday
December
afternoon.
1st, 2nd is the Thursday. I think he's still valuable to give us our board, our
Yeah.
trustee education. for elected officials. And,
I would agree with that because I think part of what our recruitment needs to be to say to all candidates working on our board. Procedures, protocol.
becoming as, as professional a board or,
Yep,
or,
effective. Support.
as we possibly can. So, that's true. That's good PR, I guess, for
Well, it is.
recruitment.
Not just frosting, it's fundamental stuff about how we as a board. Do we have a time on the 1st or 2nd?
I just asked Amy to ask him for the Thursday from 2 to 4. I don't know if that's gonna happen,
It helps to hold it because if not, even if he's not here, there may be something else we as a board are gonna need to do because June's there and.
yeah,
That's Thursday, December 1st.
yeah, but I don't know if he can do that at all, so it may be that he would be able to meet it with us like Friday, and then I would come back to you. He just is going to be up here then, and I was like, all right, let's just do that, and I would like to do it. We had Katie Brereton on the First Amendment stuff as applies specifically to libraries. What he would be doing is talking about what elected officials, and, areas, and this is a workshop that he gives all over the state. So it's not specifically us, it's not direct, it's that we need to avail ourselves of what he has to offer us so that we can thoroughly knowledgeable in what is expected of us as an elected official. The thing I really like about Jim is that he served as a county commissioner for 12 years. So he knows what it's like to be on this side. And he's also knows what it's like to be on the side of the insurance company that says you blew it, we're not gonna give you any more
Take
money.
it away.
We're not gonna, right, we're not gonna cover you anymore because you're not doing the good job. And what we would like to do is retain our coverage.
Right.
So, I know that this is a lot. And, I don't care.
Well, and I think.
No, I do care. It's not that. It's
I
like,
think,
we just have to keep moving
Yep.
forward.
That's why I would highlight saving that time, whether June does it or not. Because the closer we get to the holidays, the worse it gets trying to find time. We all of us have a little lives. So that.
No, this is all I do.
This is it. And the December meeting is always, sometimes it's on the 18th, which is worse. But the December meeting is always I'm just hoping that we can just at least close down after that meeting. Until we
Pause.
but we may have some things to get for June.
Mhm.
Um,
And it's self-serving. The sooner we get them figured out and back to June, the sooner the progress made in the search process. It's just back to her boring old gun.
Right, that's true. She's probably, yeah, that's true. So I don't know that we have anything else. We don't have any other agenda items. We've talked about this. We could I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Actually, I just want to make sure that all of these are going to be postponed.
Oh, that's a good point.
Yeah.
Right now, we'll just, yes, at Post Falls. Yeah, thank you very much.
Then I move to adjourn.
Okay, it's been moved to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
No,
Opposed?
no.
What? It doesn't matter, she's overridden.
Go for it. Enjoy that moment.